Ladies and gentlemen, what up?
You're watching Milk Hunni, where we uncover the amazingly fresh new talent right in your backyard. Hear their story? Watch them shine as we follow them on their journey to the top.
Everywhere I go, yeah, they know who we are.
It's all about getting to that milk and honey, baby. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Milk and Honey, where we show everyday people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Carmen Frazier. Today's episode, we interviewed Amber Green. I've known Amber for quite some years now. We went to school together at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, over on the Eastern Shore. While I was in Eastern Shore, Amber actually started a nonprofit organization called the Fenix Youth Project. Now that organization has grown into such a beautiful, big project. So I sat down with her to talk a little bit about her activism, the work that she's done on the Eastern Shore, to see kind of where her mindset is now with the current events and how she hopes this can influence the future. Let's take a look. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, Amber. So I want to kind of get into your background before we get into what you're currently doing. Tell us a little bit about where you're from. I know the DMV area, so tell us about that.
All right, so I originally came from Washington, D.C., Southeast D.C. I have all my family from there. I graduated from Thomas Stone High School in Waldorf, Maryland, so I was able to live the inner city life and the suburban life, the best of both worlds, which I think really helped me to become the person that I am now. I've been involved with a lot of community work. I did 2 AmeriCorps service years, one with Tri-Community Mediation, where I did mediation with inmates inside Eastern Correctional Institution. I also was the youth development specialist for the city of Salisbury, where I helped do programming for our new youth centers that are happening in the city. And I'm involved with our City of Salisbury Human Rights Advisory Committee. So I think, being that little skinny black girl from, DC who then loves skateboarding and Avril Lavigne, kind of is like the best of both worlds and kind of brought that to where I am now.
Okay, so talk about that, because for me, living out in that area, it was like a culture shock for me. It's a completely different environment. The people are different, the way of life, the way they think. So explain that transition for you of going from the Washington, D.C. area to now Salisbury, Maryland.
It was a transition, let me tell you. It was really hard. I think a lot of my growing pains, my coming to age story happened with, moving out here. I think if I was to ever write a memoir, it would be about, my experience of moving out here and realizing that it was a blast from the past. I literally traveled through time to come through here, because you realize that, over in a DC, DMV area, you see inequality, but you see economic inequality. When you come out here on the Eastern Shore, you see economic inequality as well as racial inequality. And coming from, my dad went to the Million Man March. My mom is like this top tier person in a government agency. My grandparents are always involved in different things. It's just like, what do you mean racial inequality? I thought we were past that. And so I had to really grow up when I came to the Eastern Shore. I had to identify my own privilege in a way, because I had the privilege of living away from the Eastern Shore. And there are a lot of Black women, Black youth, Black men who don't have that privilege, and they have to still reside here. And so that's why I'm so dedicated in changing a lot of things that are here.
So now we're in 2020 and things have been a little crazy. So seeing that grow, and it's been many years that you've been adapting to the Salisbury life, and now seeing how the entire world is like, the shield is off. Now they're all of a sudden seeing all of this racial inequality in America. What is your kind of, and I know there's no like quick answer for it, but like, what is your take on all of this?
So I have to compartmentalize. I do a lot. So when all the changes that are happening on a national level, my natural reaction, like with the NFL and the NBA, is that, it's cute. It's cute. Like, it's great. This is what happens when pandering works right now. However, on a local aspect, when I see things being made, like the acting mayor right now, she created a street sign that says Black Lives Matter Boulevard.
3, 2, 1.
And she made that sign directly across the street from our courthouse. The same courthouse that where on the lawn there was a Confederate marker, that where our county executive, years before he, years before he finally decided to change his mind, he said that that marker wouldn't come down until over his dead body. And that marker is down now. By his choice, he wanted to put that down. And so I think a lot of the things that are happening, it's a new time. I'm excited for it locally. However, I want to put a lot of focus on people to hold people accountable. You can't just stop at a street sign. You can't just stop at a mural. It's about really changing the policies and really going into depth. So I'm excited for it, but I'm not too excited. Being too excited is what got us here.
Yes, I definitely feel that. So, something that's like almost your little baby is your nonprofit. I
Yes.
actually was around when you kind of just started it, so to see it grow.
Yes.
Can you just kind of tell me a little bit about it, and then what came about you wanting to open this nonprofit?
So one of the things that I kept talking about when I moved out here on the Eastern Shore was that, where is the youth? Like, where is that youth energy? Where is that culture, that youth culture? And I realized there was no space for youth to feel, to be raw, to talk about different issues, to do poetry, creative activities. And so one of the real first reasons why I started Fenix Youth Project was to create this creative space. And then challenge youth to use their creativity to, make changes in their community and their neighborhoods. And from there, we've grown like so big, so fast. We were able to get awarded a Maryland Humanities Grant, to where we work with previously incarcerated youth and young adults. And we taught them how to do multimedia work, and they told their stories about how being incarcerated has changed them. And we were able to show those stories to the state's attorney, to the mayor, to police chief, and it started a conversation. I've seen youth that I've encountered when they were 16 and now they're 24, and I feel so old, but I'm watching them grow and they're becoming activists. Like all the protests that have been coming since, June, since George Floyd, all of that has been coming since, youth that I've mentored through our organization and really tried to empower them to say, use your voice. You have one, and, you have the right to use it. And so with the community center that we're opening up, I just wanted to create that space for them.
So, why do you think the youth is such an important aspect of molding them and for the future?
Because I think the generations before us kind of dropped the ball. I believe there was a time where there were community leaders identified in our communities, and we put so much hope and so much power behind these individuals that something clicked, that they did not want to pass the torch. They didn't want to inform the younger generations, or they didn't want to kind of like transition, I think, the young leaders. And so I see a lot of our elders now who have realized that they dropped the ball. And so now they're calling on young people to lead and to come, be voices in these different circles and these tables. However, youth are so important to the movement because that's the energy. That's how you know what's truly happening. You're just looking from the outside looking in if you're, an elder or an adult who are just criticizing the issues or, talking about the solutions or brainstorming when you aren't experiencing it. You're not going to school with a racist teacher. You're not going back home and you're LGBT and your parents are homophobic. You're not going to the grocery store and you're getting called, the N-word by kids your age on your bike. Like, this is 2020 and this is happening now. And I think adults have a hard time realizing that.
So, what has been your most monumental moment being an activist? What has been your I got it, my aha moment, finally type moment?
I would say recently. I would say recently with the George Floyd, all the protests that have been going on with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. Um, and how I realized that aha moment is when I saw the awakening in these kids' eyes. It was the same awakening that I had with Trayvon Martin. I was in Princess Anne McDonald's when they said the verdict. And I was there and I saw all these rednecks just cheer. And that made me feel so disgusted. I was at my HBCU getting a Happy Meal because I didn't want to put on too much freshman 50. But and I'm watching the CNN news and I'm seeing people cheer, and that pain, that anger, all of that I felt at that moment, I saw in these kids. And I realized I didn't have nobody to help channel me. So let me channel this because it can go left so quickly. And so my aha moment, like the biggest achievement in my activism, is just literally not really organizing any protests this past time, but really seeing youth come to me and say, hey, Amber, we want to do this. What should we do? I didn't have to say, hey, you're doing this protest. Let me help you do this. I'm like, all right, you're going to do this protest. I support you. And then they're like, well, what should we do? How should we do this? Like I had someone said I was a spirit guide. I was like, whoa, that's a little too much. But, I think youth get this bad rap that they don't want to learn, that they think they know everything. And they don't. They accept the fact that they don't know everything. However, they want people who they can relate to help guide them. And that's not going to talk at them, but talk to them. And, recently just having that experience and being in the newspaper, I was in the Baltimore Sun, Washington Post. So it's just people just looking at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lot. But it's my aha moment because I didn't have no one else in my corner to say, this is what you should do. I had a lot of people telling me, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Not saying, hey, you're doing amazing work. I like the energy that you have. May I suggest this? And if they don't take the suggestion, being okay with that. Like, that's what a lot of adults don't do. I'm okay with the fact that those kids did not take my suggestion. They will come back to me when they realize something went wrong. But I don't know. I just love the realness of it, the rawness of it, just the building of connections, building relationships. It's truly like it takes a village.
I really like the fact that you just said like I was able to take a back seat to all of this. Like the world is changing before our eyes and you were just able to like coast. Like, okay, I see you.
And I wanted to, and it's funny because a lot of people were worried that I was doing that. A lot of people were like, are you really going to? Yes, I am. Because they're not going to learn how to do it until someone tries to tell them to do it. And I was struggling like when I first started, like when Trayvon Martin, also, you got to think about our generation, like us, our age, we were woken up with Trayvon Martin. Like that shook our whole souls, but nobody caught on to the anger. No one caught on and channeled it. We didn't have nothing to do. And then with Freddie Gray and then Philando Castile, it's just kept being like consistent over and over again. But then George Floyd happened. This generation was like, nah, not today. And I was like, I feel you. And we about to do this. And so it wasn't like locally, the amount of people that were showing out was amazing. Nationally was amazing. Globally, it's amazing. And so I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
So what could be your biggest advice for someone who wants to make that change in the world, but doesn't know necessarily how to start, where to begin, and what to do? What could like your best advice?
Ripples to waves. I consistently say it all the time. I think that when we're looking at the problems in our community and we're looking at the problems, we get so overwhelmed. Because once we start looking at one problem, we realizing that it's another problem and there's another problem. And so they're stacking on top of each other. And so that discourages us in a way, because we're like, how can we fix this when there's something else that's going to come behind? Just take a ripple, just take one piece of chunk. So like when you stick your hand in a puddle, it just makes one little ripple and then it goes out into this huge wave. Like one little finger can just create this huge wave of change. And that's what I've been doing personally. I can't fix homelessness, but I can fix this child being hungry right now. I can't fix, systematic racism inside our schools, but I can hold this meeting with these couple of teachers to help them realize that they can actually be anti-racist. So just look at what you're doing as an individual, and that's where you start at. Don't get blindsided and overwhelmed by all the problems. Problems are going to be there regardless. You're going to wake up and there's going to be a new problem, but it's all about how you approach it and just not giving up.
And so you talked a little bit about hope, this whole movement being hope. What is kind of some of the future that you want to see in the world? Like, what's some of the changes you hope will come from all of this?
I have a lot of hope. I can tell you specifically what I hope to see in Salisbury is a ban on no-knock warrants. I would like to see our law enforcement agencies to work with community members to advocate for law change on handcuffing minors. I would love to see police outside of our schools. I would love to see more Black teachers inside Wacomico County public schools. Too many of us are leaving the Eastern Shore to go work in PG and DC, and I'm trying to figure out why. We have perfectly great schools here. So those are like the immediate changes, but overall, what I want to see, what I have hope for, is more youth taking leadership roles, and not just taking leadership roles to fill a quota, but to actually take leadership roles, make decisions, and have the respect that they deserve, to, be a voice and to have a hand in finding solutions to these problems that they're experiencing themselves. I just want to see more of a village working together. We're an army, especially now when we got so much craziness going on. We have to stick together.
Okay, and so how do you see yourself fit in all that? What is your immediate things that you're working on to kind of help those goals come true?
One of the things that I try to do is just always be a light for youth who are coming up. I think I've made myself extremely accessible, probably too accessible, to youth and young adults who want to become leaders. I remember when I wanted to start a nonprofit, I wanted to get in activism, I kept going to our elders, and it was hard to reach. It was hard to get an email back. It was hard to get a phone call. And I'm big on just openness and transparency. And so my role in that is just being me and being my truthful self. And hopefully, allowing youth to see that not everybody has it all together, but they're trying to make something better in the world. That's the reality that I think a lot of youth need to see. And my role is just to be me, be the best me that I possibly can. And if that involves, coming up with different programming, coming up with different, organizing protest demonstrations, and I'll do that. Or if that means just taking a seat back and, just chilling and saying, you got it. I'm just going to be the best me that I possibly can, because I think that's what's going to help the young generation, especially with building that relationship.
All right. And so you talked about you being easily accessible. Tell me some of the ways people can connect with you if they want to learn more about your nonprofit or what some of the stuff you're doing on the Eastern Shore. Like, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
The best way to get in contact with me is through my email, amsaidit@gmail.com. And then I also have a website at amsaidit.com. And follow me on Instagram. That's usually how I communicate best with everyone that's following me. And that's where you can get a lot of the behind the scenes on what it is to run a nonprofit and what it is to run a nonprofit as a Black woman, because that is a trip. But that's one way you can get involved with me. Follow me on Instagram. My email, Am said it, very simple. And I will just make sure that I'm able to answer your questions or to point you in the right direction on how you can get involved.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know you're just coming off of work, and you were nice to get me into your busy schedule, because I know it takes a lot to change the world.
Well, no problem. I was like, when you sent me the invite, I was like, of course, Hawk Pride, anything.
Yes, that you and me as HBC, you made love right there.
Yes. Right. Well, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Amber so much for joining me. I think she hit a lot of important topics, especially with this time. Mentally, it could be a lot for people, but it's important that you do know that you can make a difference. And it just takes that initial step, that first step into actually making a difference in the world. And I think that is a big key for a lot of us, that we feel like there's nothing that we can do. But hopefully this empowers you to know that you can do something. If you'd like to be on the show, it's really simple. All you have to do is email me at milkandhoneyshow@gmail.com. Again, thank you for watching. I'm your host, Carmen Frazier, and I hope to see you next time.